think the effect becomes unique for us because we are either experiencing it or we see colleagues who look like us experiencing
Mhm.
it. So it could be one or multiple things that weigh on our mental, physical, or emotional health. And so I'm thinking a lot about this concept of weathering. And I was recently reading about how weathering causes Black women to age faster and to age earlier. And even the efforts we put forth to resist and combat have an impact on us, right? Because we're trying to fight and combat against stress.
Welcome to Student Affairs Now, the online learning community for student affairs educators. I'm your host, Rochelle Pope. Today we are discussing Black women's health and well-being and our lived experiences in higher education. The issue is relevant and the responses are critical. We have 4 amazing guests today. I feel so lucky. Doctors Mary Howard Hamilton, Lori Patton Davis, Sherry Watt, and Paris Whitaker. If that isn't a superstar lineup, I don't know what is. Student Affairs Now is the premier podcast and online learning community for thousands of us who work in, alongside, or adjacent to the field of higher education and student affairs. We release new episodes every week on Wednesdays. Find details about this episode or browse our archives at studentaffairsnow.com. Today's episode is sponsored by Rutledge, Taylor & Francis. View their complete catalog of authoritative educational titles at rutledge.com/education. This episode is also sponsored by Huron, a global professional services firm that collaborates with clients to put possible solutions into practice. As I mentioned, I'm your host, Rochelle Pope. My pronouns are she and her, and I'm a professor in the Higher Education and Student Affairs program at the University of Buffalo. I also serve as the Senior Associate Dean for Faculty and Student Affairs and the Unit Diversity Officer for the Graduate School of Education. I'm recording today near the University of Buffalo's campus on the unceded land of the Haudenosaunee people. Let's get into this conversation. We are so grateful to welcome you all. I am thrilled that you're here. And I'm going to ask that you start off by please introducing yourself with your pronouns and to share a bit about yourself and how you're entering the conversation today. So Mary Howard Hamilton, Dr. Mary Howard Hamilton, I'm going to ask you to please start us off.
Hey, thank you, Rochelle, for inviting me to your platform today. I am Dr. Mary Howard Hamilton. I use she, her pronouns, and I am the chair of the Department of Educational Leadership at Indiana State University, and I'll be closing out my 8-year tenure as chair in about 4 weeks. And I'm also professor of the higher education leadership program at Indiana State. I am entering today fresh from visiting the motherland, the continent of Africa, the country of South Africa, and my mind is swimming with all kinds of amazing ideas and interactions with some amazing global partners who have had great conversations with me over the past 2 weeks about higher education, where we are in higher today, issues of race, racism, sexism, homophobia in the academy. And I'm just thrilled to be here to maybe share just some tidbits about some of the things that I picked up over there.
Great. Laura, can you pick up?
Absolutely. Happy to be here with you all today. Thank you so much for the invitation. I'm Dr. Lori Patton Davis. My pronouns are she and her, and I am a professor in the Higher Education and Student Affairs program at The Ohio State University, which is on the lands of the Shawnee, Potawatomi, Delaware, Miami, Peoria, Seneca, Wyandotte, Ojibwe, and Cherokee peoples. So we just all on folks' lands, but okay. Um, Pleased to be here. And I think the thing that's resonating with me today and how I'm entering is I have Black feminism on my mind. And
Mhm.
so What I'll contribute today is heavily connected to some of the work that I'm doing around Black feminism.
Thank you, Lori. Sherry?
Hi, everyone. I'm really excited to be here as well, and always look forward to good conversation, and really enjoy having the chance to talk with everyone here. I am Dr. Sherry Watt. I am a professor at the University of Iowa, and I'm coming to the conversation today, I think, in my recovery period from the end of a very long academic year, and rediscovering and reconnecting myself with my joys. So as I process and detox from all the different ways that being a Black woman in higher ed has played out for me, I am reminding myself of the things that I enjoy most, and those are playing and catching the ball, or my dog catching the ball, playing fetch with my dog. I love chocolate labs. And also, I'm a sports fan, so I'm enjoying watching basketball and all that, and all the other sports, wrestling being one of my favorites. And then I would say my last joy is I'm not able to live it out as much as I used to, but I still hold on to the fact that I'm an athlete and I like to move and get myself going, and wish I could do the things I could when I was a younger athlete, but it's still in my mind. I'm still holding my athlete mindset. So that's what I'm bringing today to the conversation.
That's great. And Paris, not last, but definitely not least.
Greetings, all. My name is Dr. Paris Wicker. I use she, her pronouns, and I've just completed my first year as an assistant professor of higher education at the University at Buffalo. I'm so excited for this opportunity to be in community with so many of my mentors and people that I look up to. I research success and well-being and health in higher education for Black and Indigenous students, faculty, and staff. So it's my research, but it's also my life. I want to practice what I preach as I enter into the academy. I keep thinking a lot about how I can do this well. I also have two daughters who are 4 and 6, and my 6-year-old just told me that she wants to be a professor when she grows up. So I said, oh, Lord. But I want to create a place where I can be well and she can be well at the same time. So that's why I'm here, and I'm excited to be here.
That's great. I have to tell you all, from the moment I woke up this morning in the shower all day long, all I have been thinking of is Mary J. Blige's Work That song. So I'm thinking about Kamala walking out to that song, and I'm thinking, oh, I am so pumped for this conversation. So thank you again. I think it is fair to say that all of us and so many other Black women, especially those of us working in higher education, have been thinking about, worrying about the trauma that Black women are facing in these often toxic environments in higher education. I think back to 2020, when the Twitter site Blacks in the Ivory came out, and listening to those stories and how they recounted incident after incident on campus of Black faculty, administrators, and staff. More recently, we see those same types of social media posts, articles, and news stories about the issues faced by Black women. We can recall the hounding of the Black president of Harvard and Lori's eloquent article in Diverse Issues about that situation. The Essence magazine article about the death of the VP of Student Affairs at Lincoln University. We can think about Dr. Cannadia Bailey and Dr. Joanne Epps of Temple University and Dr. Montague of Volunteer State Community College. We know that these aren't isolated, tragic issues. In fact, Alexia Hudson Ward from MIT Libraries wrote in her blog once that the persistent job stress, punctuated by the racism and sexism that BIPOC women leaders encounter in higher education, can devastate these women's physical, emotional, and mental health. So that's the reason for this conversation. And it might be the place for us to begin this conversation. What are the important and unique and harmful effects experienced by Black women in higher education? And how have they affected you or the women you know? That's a big, big question. So I'm going to start off with Lori to get us started with this.
All right, thanks. I think you've done a great job of just offering the context. Any viewer and all of us kind of are familiar with what the literature and research says around how Black women experience higher education. But I think the effect becomes unique for us because we are either experiencing it, or we see colleagues who look like us experiencing it. So it could be one or multiple things that weigh on our mental, physical, or emotional health. And so I'm thinking a lot about this concept of weathering. And I was recently reading about how weathering causes Black women to age faster and to age earlier. And even the efforts we put forth to resist and combat have an impact on us, right? Because we're trying to fight and combat against stress. And so I'm thinking about that, as well as structural determinism, right? So we're in these structures, these intersecting structures of racism and sexism and heterosexism, all of these pieces that I think have a cumulative effect on how we navigate higher education, how we navigate society more broadly, and what that means not only for us, whether we're faculty or practitioners, but it weighs on us as mothers, spouses, as caregivers. And for some of us, it means escaping and moving to a different locale or finding another role or whatever. But I think the larger impact is that for Black women, there isn't necessarily this point of continued rest that we get the opportunity to tap into. And so I think that is the most harmful effect of that. We have to grab and snatch and try to steal moments in what sometimes feels like otherwise very toxic spaces in higher education.
Yeah.
Lori, I really appreciate what you're saying and all the different ways you describe the toll that it takes. What resonated immediately with me that I was thinking about when I think of my own suffering, the unexpected part that you referred to for me is how hard it is for me to see suffering in other sisters and brothers, right? Like the harm that it does to me to hear their story as I'm managing my own story. And I don't even realize sometimes, I think when I'm hearing it and seeing it, sometimes I literally think I blank out because I just can't take any more in. And then I'm like, wait a minute, what did you say again? I mean, it just seems like it's compiles in so many ways, which I think manifests itself in, you know, we are tired when we see each other, even though we're happy to see each other, and so, then sometimes you can't see each other because not only because it's hectic and you're busy and you're scrambling, but you also know that when you see each other, you are going to be visiting your pain, and so that for me is what, when I think of how I cope and what I see, I think of that. I also think of the ways it breaks me down in terms of it makes you're always having to reposition yourself around reality. You know how other people see you, but you are trying to persistently see yourself a particular way. And you have to constantly negotiate between that othering reality. And that is dizzying for me at times. I'm constantly having to call somebody and say, remind me again, remind me that I'm not crazy. Can you tell me again? It's like you just have this negotiation between those different realities all the time. So that is the second guessing, how you manage it, and also how you process the pain that you're managing while you're managing someone else's, and all the different ways you try to avoid that if at all possible. At the same time, provide support. That there's all these different dichotomies that I think play out. So that's what comes to my mind.
Mary or Paris, is there anything else that you would add to that, or some other take that you had on that?
Yeah, I think I'll just add, I mean, I appreciate Lori when you added about weathering and that the consequences for Black women under this stress, like it's great, has a greater toll on our body. And when I started reading about the health literature that like our money won't save us, having more money doesn't make us less likely to have comorbidities or have an early death. Having higher education doesn't seem to help. And so I think sometimes it is really depressing and daunting when you see that. Now, of course, joy is happening. Joy and thriving is happening. And for me, it's a particular pathway. I had the opportunity to research Black women and their health when I was in graduate school, and the way that these Black women, they didn't hold anything back. And at first I thought, are they trying to traumatize me? But I realized now it was actually a gift. They wanted me to come into this space, eyes wide open. They wanted me to know about how they felt both hyper visible, having feeling the need to be perfect and the stress that comes with that and never make a mistake and being highly scrutinized. And at the same time, feeling invisible and not having the mentorship and the support and the guidance that they needed, and how that those two things compounded upon each other. And so I think because of that, I really go into this like there is a pathway of thriving, but it's very particular. And I know now that Black women can't just go anywhere. We need support and guidance. And so that's something that I will add to that, our physical bodies, right? They say Black don't crack. That's on the outside. But on the inside, stress is killing us and we may not look it. That's the hard part. They may see us and be like, oh girl, you look good. Or we don't always want to look how we've been through, right? Is what they say.
Right.
So you know, Black won't crack on the outside, but on the inside, these things can be incredibly detrimental.
Mhm.
Yeah, I do agree with what my sister scholars are saying. The weathering piece of it that Lori began with is coming full circle with our conversations, and yeah, I thank God that we're really melanated, because boy, I tell you, if they if they really saw the stress on us, it would be there would be a lot of trauma physically, that would be quite visible. I was listening also to what Paris just mentioned about just briefly, you mentioned about the financial piece of it, and I agree that I wish that we had a way that we could be provided monies for all the work that we do in a way that in which we're compensated equitably. It's interesting that one of the things that has been really traumatizing for one of my young sister scholars, it has been trying to make ends meet in this profession that doesn't pay much, and then on top of that, you know, as Black women, we're at the very bottom of everything economically, in terms of pay, negotiating, the attempt to get more money. And so very briefly, I just want to say that, you know, I think that one of the pieces about the weathering and trauma for us is also the feminization of poverty is real, even for Black women who have PhDs, EDDs, whatever, who have terminal degrees and are trying to make it in this field. I'm just really concerned that one of the things that we've got to teach our young sister scholars is to understand is to understand our self-worth financially, to understand it and to really fight for it.
Mhm.
And that will hopefully help a little bit with the weathering piece of it.
Good. Well, one of the things that Paris said and that you picked up on is this financial thing, and why that's really important is I'm not sure if you know, I was looking on my bookshelf to see if I had it handy. Linda Villarosa's book, Under the Skin. It's The Hidden Toll of Racism on American Lives and the Health of Our Nation. It is brilliant. It is fascinating. It was on the short list for the Pulitzer just a couple of years ago. And in her book, she talks about people tried to explain away the effect of the poor health care for Black folks and other folks of color and tried to explain away a lot of this. And they said, no, it's really poverty that's doing it. And the study result says, no, it isn't. It is racism. And so it doesn't matter if you have the highest degrees. It doesn't matter if you are making a lot of money. You are still being affected in some really horrible ways that are affecting our health on the inside. You know, I have an example. In the fall of 2020, so we had come back, campuses weren't, for the first time in my life, I started experiencing high blood pressure. And it was a direct result of my role and the kinds of things I was doing. I was hearing everybody's pain, as Sherry was talking about. I was doing this. And so the doctor said she was going to send me through for a stress test, on my heart. And I said, I'm a Black woman living in America through these twin pandemics of racism and COVID. You don't have to give me any more stress. I'm in the midst of it, right? And so she laughed and sent me off to a cardiologist. But that's so I see that and I realize this is deeper. This is, and we don't recognize it. And so we hold the pain of others, not just the ones who we know are coming to us, but the ones who are supposed to come to us, our students, our mentees, our friends, our loved ones who are struggling as well. And then we end up holding that and we want to hold it. We see it as our role. And yet we aren't getting those places enough to hold it, to have somebody else hold ours for a little while. And we've got to figure out ways to be able to do that. So this conversation is so important. And if you don't have Linda Villarosa's book, you've got to get it. It is so incredibly well written.
There's also another book. I think her name is Sakil Nzinga, I think maybe. I have some more recent book called Lean Semesters.
Yes.
And wow, it's been very hard to get through that book, right? I couldn't get through the first chapter. I think it's titled Mortgaging Our Brains. And there's just this thing that happens with Black women, and this is just within the higher education context, all of the brilliance, bringing all of the creativity, all of those things. And this is unpaid labor, right? Because it's easy, I think, in some ways to just, and it's not magic. I mean, but Black women make it happen in higher education,
Right.
But that making it happen doesn't then lead to promotion. It doesn't lead to additional compensation. Actually, from this particular book, it leads to more debt if you're a graduate student, right? And you're being tapped to engage in all these committees and do all of these things. And so you're giving, or contributing all of this brain power, but not much in return. You're actually becoming beholden to the institution. And so there's this weird cyclical dynamic that we can be mules and, do all of this work in higher education. And it's an expectation that is externally driven and that we're socialized to make internal for us that this is something, we have to do. And so part of the decolonization, I would say, of our minds is just understanding that the labor doesn't have to be ours. Like we can save that brain power and place it elsewhere. It doesn't always have to be situated in higher education or situated in the ways that I think we, again, through graduate school and, tenure track or, going through our respective graduate programs, been socialized to, be givers to the academy without really fully understanding that it's not a reciprocal kind of relationship that's happening.
Yeah,
exactly. And with that, sorry, I was just going to say with the book Lean Semesters, they really focused on Black women as adjuncts because the majority of folks who are serving in that role and contingency roles, and that in essence, we're disposable. We give and give and give our soul. And when they no longer need us or when it's no longer useful, then they get rid of us and won't feel bad about it. And so I really appreciate that Lori saying like, labor doesn't have to be ours. And oftentimes, and this is something, you know, Rochelle's been really great as a great mentor, because I was like, I want to do this, I want to support students. And she's like, you don't have to do all, you don't have to do all that. But I think if I don't do it, who will? And I know that that has been ingrained in me, right? I've gotten that socialization from somewhere. But I love that point that somebody will pick it up, right? It does not have to be solely Black women doing the work. But I know many of us who are coming through the academy, we feel that sense of responsibility, right? That heavy burden, I think, to care for those around us.
Not only do we feel a sense of responsibility, but I think we put pressure on each other because there's so much to do that we know we're obligated, and we expect that of each other, and the folks who are coming to us expect it of us. I have a former doc student of mine who is part of our writing group. Her name is Millie Oliver, and she wrote this. Part of her writing includes this idea of I rest when I'm not tired. And I thought, oh, this is, the idea, which she's in the question I think she posed is, why do I have to deserve rest? So it's this conversation is making me think about something I want to wonder about and would love to talk about is, what if we put what I call racism on the clock, right? What if we aren't doing the extra outside of time, but oh, we got derailed by racism today and all the craziness, which is every day. So I'm going to not do this because I had to do this. I spent this much time. What if we did something like that? I think when this idea of saving ourselves, and we're talking about being exhausted and we feel obligated to do more, how could we manage our time in a way that is different? I think about that a lot. I think, I am expected to do these things, but at what point in my career and in my life do I get to also enjoy my money or enjoy my time or enjoy my status? At some point, when do I get to say that that's okay and other people not dictate that? So I don't know if that jumps to a different conversation, but it just makes me think when we're raising this, how exhausted we are. What if we were doing it differently? I just wonder.
Sherry, I hear you almost talking about sort of like a comp time, right?
Yeah.
In the business world, there's
reclaiming my time,
work
That's
on
right.
Saturday, so I get a different day off in the week. And you're saying, hey, this got in the way. This clear environment, this racism, this toxic environment, whatever was happening, stopped me from being able to do these other things I needed to do. I need some comp time to make up for that. I'm going to rest and put this aside for a while. I think of Bernice Johnson Reagan's song from Sweet Honey in the Rock, we who believe in freedom cannot rest, right? Now, I know for a fact Bernice Johnson did not mean we weren't allowed to rest. What she meant was somebody else is going to pick it up. So we do it. When we get tired, someone else picks it up for a while. We join back into this marathon. And I think that that's still part of what you're saying, that it's going to have to get done, but somebody else is going to have to take their share, take their leg of this race.
Yeah, what would happen?
I agree. Yeah, I agree with Sherry 100% on this. And the thing that's tricky is not feeling guilty about it, because we've been brainwashed to feel guilty about taking that comp time. You got to step away from it and just say, hey, that's your issue, not mine. I'm going to reclaim my time. I'm going to take care of myself because I want to be here for a while. And oftentimes what I've found is that our own colleagues can be our own worst enemy with this. I'll give you a really quick example. I have been focusing on doing that a lot more intentionally the past few years, and we have a new colleague on campus, who African American woman, who had been she came on board, she was asking me to do a whole lot of stuff. And I really appreciate that because I know I knew, she was new and I knew that she wanted me to be connected and engaged with her. And I started saying no. And she got upset, and so we had to have a conversation about um, the length of time I've already been on campus, 20 years, and the amount of time I have given body, soul, time, and that there are other ways that I could be of great help without advising every group and doing everything.
Mhm.
So we have to remember sometimes we're our own worst enemy. And the second thing is to not let people guilt you into saying yes.
Well, that really moves us into some of these coping strategies for this. How we say no, when we say no. It's a very different conversation, Mary, for you and I to say no, as we are so much for. We're just old. That's what I'm trying to say. I was trying to find a nice way to say it. I'm old,
Yeah, ditto. And I just don't care what people say
Right.
anymore when I say no or whatever. And
And
I know when we look at young scholars like Paris, you know, she's at a stage in a place in her career where saying no could be volatile. And what I tell my young, particularly my young Black colleagues and scholars, is that the first thing you got to ask yourself is, will I be missed?
Mhm.
And then also talk to your mentor. You know, I was asked to do this, and your mentor will help you with it, but you got to ask yourself, will I be missed?
Mhm.
And things like, for example, attending commencement ceremonies. Yes, you will be missed, and you need to be in that space. Although annoying, and it's long. However, for just a little while, yeah, you need to be in that space. But there are other places you don't need, you won't be missed. So don't worry about it.
Mhm. Yeah, definitely how to say no. I've gotten the advice like, oh, have a no committee. And it's like, but I still, it feels like, what's the consequence? And you don't know what that is. But I love the idea that starting now, like that it is possible and it's expected. Right. I talk to some of my other colleagues who are white or white males, are like, oh, I say no all the time. Like no is their default. And so really, and not that I want to move exactly in that direction, because I don't know that that's always helpful too, but really being mindful about, yeah, am I going to be missed? Can someone else do the work? Maybe it's not right now, maybe it's later, and so I think being strategic, right? When I first started, someone said, well, what's your strategy? And I said, well, they don't talk about this. They don't talk about like having a strategy, and not just a strategy, on the faculty side for tenure, because but like this person was asking me, like, what's my strategy for life? What is my strategy for wholeness? And it was a different type of strategy, which I really appreciated. But I realized, like, oh, I actually need to think about that. Just like I think about how to get tenure, all of those things. Like I need a strategy to care for myself and being able to revisit that plan. And so I feel very grateful to that person asking me for that. But yeah, I think that's important. It's equally, I mean, it's non-optional, I see at this point.
Mhm.
Kind of related to that is don't, it's very difficult for other people to make a determination about what's on your plate. So you really have to do your own discernment. I mean, people can listen to you, and help you to clarify what you can say yes and no to. But the idea of what that took out of me in order for me to be able to do this, I also think of what are the things in my calendar that are energy givers versus energy drainers. And how do I, if I have to do this toxic meeting, how do I plan to recover from that? If I have to do a day of this, where is my day where I get the rejuvenated part of my energy? When do I get to sit with the group that I enjoy working with, and the way they work in academia, and making sure that I schedule those into my calendar as a regular rhythm in my day. Back to the briefly the racism on the clock. It's like, okay, where is my support group? What are my, where is my network of sisters that provide me with energy? And I'm going to meet with them, during the workday. I'm not going to do it in the evening. I'm not going to do it at some odd hour. I'm going to actually put it on my calendar during the workday because that recovery is important for me. And therefore, it is in my calendar, just like every other meeting. So those are some of the things that I think about when I'm trying to cope and make sure my energy stays balanced and whole.
I love that.
I just wanted to add a couple of things. One, as we're talking about this conversation, I I I think we're saying it without saying it, but I don't want it to go miss that for us, it's not just racism. So there is a highly gendered piece, even as we're talking about time and where we need to be and work. Like these are all expectations. I don't really see a lot of Black men dealing with it. I don't see a lot of my white colleagues dealing with it. And so I really feel like one, when we talked earlier about doing all of the work and all of that, part of doing that is because we know that if it's not done right, it has unique consequences for us as Black women. So we end up doing it anyway, just because, right? But there is a piece of this conversation that I just think is important, that we can't forget that it's something about being a Black woman that makes us feel like we need to be at graduation, or makes us feel like we need to advise this particular group, or that these are not expectations that everybody else feels. And so as I am, mentoring Black women, and we're having conversations about, should I do this? Do I need to, go to this? And the advice has really been consistent in terms of, just be undeniable, right? If you're going up for tenure or you're trying to go for promotion, there's certain things that, if you're at a research and extensive university or whatever, it's very rare that as people are deliberating on your case that they're going to say she didn't show up for graduation.
Right.
But they'll talk about your articles. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, in terms of thinking about that strategy around promotion, you do need to do your teaching, research, and service. Like you're literally being paid to do that. But you can exercise. And again, I don't think we always think we can exercise more flexibility in the places where we're visible, right? You get one NIH grant, they don't care anyway. Like there are ways you can navigate around this so that you're not feeling stretched. And we always feel stretched. I have felt it, and I'm full professor but I felt it, but I've also felt more comfortable, one, when I've said no. And this is before I was full, learning to say no. But also understanding what it feels like to be pushed out because I'm not meeting institutional expectations around what it means to be a Black woman in this space. Meaning, as a Black woman in this space, the expectation is that you do all of this. And understanding that sometimes we can be pushed out or pushed away because we refuse. And you can be undeniable and you can also refuse many of these things. But it takes time to understand, okay, I refuse to do that. I understand that there'll be consequences, but are these the consequences I'm willing to deal with? And if it's tenure and promotion, look at your guidelines. There are specific guidelines. There's a process in the event that you're not treated fairly, to address that. If you're, a staff member, I think the parameters can become a little more different unless you're unionized. But I just wanted to put that out there, that the uniqueness really is the racism, sexism, and all of these other pieces that make it uniquely difficult for us to say no, or make it uniquely difficult to not show up, and make it uniquely difficult to understand what the implications are, that maybe we won't be believed, or we won't be given the benefit of the doubt, or, all of these pieces that, we have to consider. And again, they all lead back to weathering, you know what I'm saying? To
Right.
try
It's the same conversation.
navigate and try to remain alive,
Yeah.
in the process.
And then we can sometimes foreclose ourselves. Like for the longest time, I felt that as this Black woman who was also a mother of young kids, and I decided, okay, this is going to be my priority. So I foreclosed for the longest time, believing that I am making choices, and I was making them all in my own head. So I'm thinking, I'm never going to be full. I am not going to go up for full, because it would mean I would have to give up this kind of time, these kinds of things. I haven't done what they were expecting me to do. And I realized that I foreclosed. Now, I had to course correct very late in my career to do this differently. But so we have to listen to ourselves, dispel so many messages that we are giving ourselves, and to widen this conversation, find those supports who could tell us. I could have easily talked to some people and had them disabuse me of this thought. But part of that is, oh, you got to do this on your own, or there's only one way of doing this. And these messages say it's either impossible to do everything, or you must do everything, right? And there are some other things. And I'm wondering, what are some of those personal and community supports that you find that have helped you to survive and thrive in higher education, and that you wish you knew earlier in some cases, or you're glad somebody mentioned this to you when you were in grad school, whatever it was? What are some of those personal and community supports that help?
Wow.
Well, I think that Rochelle, you brought this up. We're old. So so many years ago, there just wasn't that type of community available for the sister scholars out there. And I have to admit, thankfully, the start of the community support for me, thankfully, it was when I was in my undergraduate and graduate career, because I was in the special support services program at the University of Iowa, and I had these wonderful sister scholars, and they are minoritized women who helped me understand my full potential. One of them, Sherry's very familiar with, Rusty Barcelo.
Yes.
Dr. Barcelo helped me immeasurably, because I was about to leave the University of Iowa the first day, orientation. And if it hadn't been for Dr. Barcelo, I don't know where I'd be right now. I had wonderful scholars who helped mentor me in my graduate career. Dr. Colleen Jones, and she helped me understand how to be a great professional in student affairs. Once I got out, it was it was a rocky road, because we weren't in these spaces. So there were a couple of white men who came along and helped me out. Now, I'm not saying that, well, they did help me out, because one white man in particular became my doctoral chair at North Carolina State University, Dr. Norm Sprinthal. He was the one that got me into my doc program at North Carolina State. After that, you know, you know, we started having the Rochelle Popes and myself and several other scholars entering the field, thankfully, who helped also pave the way for the Lori Patton Davises and Sherry Watts and others. But it was rocky. It was rocky in the very early going. And I remember I remember early on in the field where I was told not to write about black stuff.
Yep.
You remember that, Rochelle? They told me I will not get tenured
Yep.
if I wrote anything about anything related to minoritized people or
Mhm.
students. So very early on, those writings from early Mary Howard Hamilton in the archives somewhere. I don't know where the heck they are. I never dig them, but I had to do that. But once I became tenured, game on. It became another adventure. So anyway, I just wanted to kind of share that. It was rocky in the beginning, but thankfully I had some really good mentors in my undergraduate and graduate career.
Mhm.
Mary, you have become such a mentor for so many Black women. I can't talk to a Black woman scholar and I say, okay, who are some of those important mentors for you? And if they're not you, they are someone mentored by you.
Yep. Exactly. That was what I was going to say. I think Mary has reached out, been very intentional. I think her gift and capacity to be a mentor and a guide has always been, just so clear, and just so actually meaningful. It's, she tailors how she provides support to what you need. And she does it. I hope it gives her energy to do it, but she certainly gives a lot of energy that's so meaningful. So I think that I would echo that, Rochelle, and you too. I mean, I think your guidance and willingness to listen and, negotiate all of that. I'm the one that's in the mid career. I'm the one who really is really part of the Mary Rochelle generation, but too young. It's a long story how this all happened, but I got to stay around a little longer, and so I keep looking at them and saying, "Can't I go with you yet?" So, um, but when I'm thinking about the what Paris mentioned about the whole life kind of look, and your question, Rochelle, about how do you cope? What is your way of surviving? And I have found that one of the most important, I mean, I live in Iowa City, I'm at a predominantly white institution. Everything that Lori said about the particular expectations of Black women and that uniqueness of our existence, I feel that all the time. I feel it in the town, when I'm not, it doesn't matter what I'm doing. I am Sherry Watt professor at the University of Iowa when you're in this town, and so I look for spaces where people don't know who I am. and so I look to travel in places where people don't know who I am, because in a town like this, you are unidimensional, so I will say the unique place that everyone laughs because I mentioned the unique place that I find myself where no one knows me and I can just be a fan is wrestling, watching my kid wrestle and going into I mean, it's an odd spot, but it's a spot that nobody knows who you are. They don't care. They just love you because you love the sport. And there is something so freeing about being able to be in that space and love something that everyone enjoys. And most of the time people stay focused on that. I don't get the crazy, racism drama that you would expect or anything like. I don't get that there because we are all speaking the same language. So I would say finding some space where you can be more than one dimensional, and usually for me, those are in sport kinds of things or things that are associated with my kid. That would be that has been a necessary part of my coping and finding a space where I can be more than just one thing.
I love that. Now that I'm done with graduate school and in the faculty, between the pandemic and a PhD and having both of my children while I was in graduate school, I do feel like I've lost a lot of who am I? I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. And I feel like this year has been a year of discovering, like, who am I outside of Dr. Paris Wicker, which is still just new. It's just a year, a year old, but who am I outside of being a mom? Who am I outside of being a wife? But I love that idea, Sherry, about being more than unidimensional. And my undergraduate degree is in vocal performance, and I did singing, performing, but I got away from that. Like, what hobbies? People are like, what hobbies do you do? I don't know. I don't have time for hobbies, but I have been explicit about coming back to singing, coming back to singing, coming back to playing the piano. And that has been just soul giving to me. Started singing in the church choir again. And I'm like, oh yes, I forgot how much joy and love that gave me. And I like that. I now run the book fair at my daughter's school. And so they don't see me as Dr. Wicker. They see me as the parent, helping to ensure all kids have books. So I just love that. I just want to echo that idea that for me personally, that has given me joy that I did not expect, to see like I have worked so hard. I have grinded away to get to this point, to become a doctor, to be at this level. But in the end, the greatest joy are the things that I do outside of that. Like getting those initials now affords me the opportunity to do these other things. And I guess I've been surprised at how, I think, healing it has been to remember who I am outside of higher ed.
Yeah.
Um, so I will revisit the mentoring piece too, because I think I am an effective mentor because it was mentoring was modeled for me. And so that's been incredibly meaningful to have Mary pretty much throughout my career in student affairs and higher ed. And Michelle, I think I've told you this before, just what it meant, to be introduced to your work at Bowling Green. And it stuck with me in terms of how I saw myself as a scholar and what I like to write about, right? And not being, I got told, don't do work on, you don't want to study this because you'll get pigeonholed. And I'm like, but I think I like this space of doing stuff around Black culture centers and doing that at Bowling Green. It was like, yeah, you want to do res life, that's more diverse. But anyway, um being able to see perspectives that resonated with me in the literature, that sort of that and Mary making me become a faculty member, like those things uh have been really critical for me. So believe it or not, one of the things that allows me, so if I feel overwhelmed by being a mother and spouse and feel overwhelmed by job things, the thing that takes me back, and I mentioned this earlier, is doing work and writing about Black women. So I'm writing about our experiences, but I'm in there too. And so it's almost a way of journaling. So everything I'm writing, there's either a little bit or a lot of me in there to just get it out of my head, right? And so that is really freeing to me. But I found it really important to be in collaborative spaces with other Black women. So nearly every day I'm in a Zoom session with other Black women, and we're talking about what's going on with life. And then I'm like, girl, what you working on? And they say, yeah, I'm working on this. And I'm like, and so it's that sort of communal space, even though it's virtual. Um, and the book, I can't remember if we mentioned this already in this conversation. So I've been reading Rest is Resistance by Tricia Hersey. And, this whole idea that rest is a divine right? Like I don't need to deserve it. And I've just gotten more comfortable. If I feel like taking a nap,
Yep.
I'm gonna take a nap. I'm gonna watch Bridgerton.
Yes.
Or, I'm just going to do these things and not feel like there's some sort of opportunity cost that I've lost because, I didn't write or I didn't work on something, work related. And I think just how we think about community has to be a little different than how I think it has to be different in ways similar to how we've had to think differently about the family structure, right? Like community can look a whole bunch of different ways, and can be unique to what our needs are. And so I think that's the biggest thing, finding different pockets of community. So I don't have to just go to one place for support. I can go to multiple places and people for support, so that I never feel like, and I have heard this before from students saying, well, we knew you were busy, so we didn't want to bog you down. Like, I'm encouraging them, no, find multiple circles and multiple networks, so it's never a heavy lift for any one person or group, but you have all of these different resources to pull from. And so doing that, and then just sort of letting the academy be what the academy is going to be, and letting life be what life is going to be. So I guess it's compartmentalizing, but I feel like I take my whole self wherever I am, uh,
Yes.
and what I'm doing. But yeah, that's how I think, and a lot of prayer, because I think about the Academy of Spiritual Warfare, honestly. But um, uh, just finding these spaces where I can contemplate, reflect, pray, and just understand that they're people, but it's, to me, it's bigger. There's a larger, I don't know, vibe, spirit, whatever, that we're navigating through. And I see that for what it is, and try not to direct it toward any particular person or group, but understanding it's principalities, it's something larger than just the physical space of the academy.
Right.
Mm.
Yeah, I look at that and I look at us and realizing that people are going to need stuff. And I operate, I swear this is my Catholic upbringing. I operate that I'm not doing enough for enough, and often enough, right? So I operate in that space and recognize that sometimes the littlest thing that you offer is all that somebody was looking for. Stopping to ask somebody, what's going on with you? No, I mean, really, how are you? I can't solve what they're dealing with, but to give that 5-minute respite is sometimes enough. And it's all I got to give, because I got a nap waiting for me. So it's all I got to give at that moment. And that's important. And I think we can do that. So I want to shift us a little bit as we're, getting towards the end of this a little. I want to shift us into talking about joy. I have been reading so much about the need for joy. So many people looking at Black folks, looking at Black women, are ready to stop in that space of the pain and the tragedy. And so, yeah, I do want you to recognize that that is a reality that is going on, and it is being caused by these systems in which we operate. At the same time, that is not my whole experience. And, Sherry, in a conversation we had outside of this, said, we got to talk about joy. And every time you talk to Paris, she's going to remind you to talk about it. She doesn't have to say the word to me anymore. I look at her and I have to start, where's my joy? Where's my joy? I start looking for it. But I really think that we can spend a little bit of time here talking about how that is our experience as well, and that we need to highlight and allow that to be in us at these other times. So Paris, why don't you start us off there?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, joy, I think about it a lot, how to get it, how to keep it, how to attain it. And you're right. And part of it, again, is keeping it in perspective that, as someone who is, empathic and highly sensitive, yeah, if you think about all the ways in which this world can hurt you, how broken this world is, it's so easy to get very depressed. And sometimes I allow myself, I just have days, I was like, okay, on Saturday for 1 hour, I'm just going to feel the burden of the world for an hour, pray about it, and then move on. So I think it's important to realize that we're in a system that causes a lot of suffering.
Mm-hmm.
And I never want to forget that. I don't want to ignore it. But at the same time, I realize there's so much joy. And part of it is having young kids now, because they see joy in anything, a little leaf, like my daughter brought a little, she's like, just look at it. Look how many stems, just the mystery of life. And I feel really inspired by that. And so I really try to think about what are the ways that we can find joy in the work that we do in higher ed. I see it a lot through my students, which has been a great joy, the joy that they bring, the passion that they bring, and reminding people of that. And thinking about joy does not mean that you're not acknowledging the suffering, right? I think sometimes people think that it's either or. If you're talking about joy, you should be talking about all the other things that are going on, but they need it both. And I've been doing some reading, trying to study folks who have done social justice work and civil rights work. And they said, oh, rest and joy and humor and laughter, that was all a part of it. That fuels you so that you can do the work, so that you can continue on. And again, seeing that as non-optional. So I encourage my students to think about delight. I ask them, like, what did you do that brought you delight today? Like, I don't know. And I would ask them, or what was something you did as a kid that you still do right now? Right. And it forces you to think like, what, maybe there are ways. So it takes work, but I definitely believe it's the small things that you do consistently over time that can help support you, lift you up, fulfill you in a way. So those are things that I tend to do. Like I said, music is a big part of that for me. But making connections with people, Bridgerton, I've been binging, binging the TV. But it's important. So I try to encourage students and practice it myself. It's like, it's non-optional. This is actually a part of what it means to succeed. Think about joy, you think about delight just as much as all the other things.
Sherry, now joy is such a big part of you, and so important that this is a part of this conversation. What would you add?
Yeah, I mean, I think Paris said it beautifully. I mean, I think all of those things I would highlight too. And I think there's also a part of me that wants to think about my joy as pure as it can be and defined to me. And I think that it goes to something else that's a thread through this conversation. I sometimes think that by putting pressure on ourselves, by what we understand Black folk are supposed to do, when we see ourselves externally and looking in, it's like Lori said, there are these expectations of Black women and what Black women are supposed to do. There are these so we start to see ourselves as other people see us rather than how we want to be seen. So I realize that sometimes people ask me how I'm doing, and they're asking me in a particular way because they want to hear the plight of suffering of Black people that day, And I am like, I want to consciously not respond to that, because there are more things in my life that are joyful than my suffering. I mean, and so I want to focus on that. So I guess I'm when I'm thinking about joy these days, I'm thinking about how not to get tripped up and start to talk about suffering, as we always do, and even with each other. It's like, we want to talk about the man bringing us down, the institution bringing us down. All of that is true. And we have so many other things that provide us with sustenance that I would like to focus more on those when we're asking each other about how our souls are today.
Yeah.
I think I've honestly, and this might sound light, but one of the things that gives me so much joy is Black Twitter. And I mean, I have so many reels, like things that I save because I know that's the thing I can go back to and it will make me laugh immediately. So the laughter and joy that's on Black Twitter, I think can lift me up in an instant, especially when it's something really heavy and Black Twitter can make a nice joke out of it. Um, so that, and then, music play, I have a soundtrack depending on, what day it is. And that's the thing, really, I hope somebody is studying this, because I can listen to Renaissance on the way to campus, and I'm ready. Even though I don't want to go, but it's a couple of songs I can put on and like I'm ready. Like let's do it. So music, is very healing. All kinds of music can be very healing. And then just having good people who listen, like who listen, who believe me,
Mm-hmm.
and who validate it. And they're not trying to give me advice,
Yep.
but they listen to it and they get it, right? And they can help me think through. Like that brings me tremendous joy to get that one thing, when it's like you have a conversation and you're like, I don't believe they just, and then you talk to the one person and they're like, oh no, they did, just because I can release it, right? Like I don't need to send an email to that person and pop off or anything. I just needed somebody to help me get out of this headspace
Yep.
and confirm, no, I'm not crazy. I'm not tripping. They really did come for you right there, and you don't have to waste the energy going back. It happened. Yes, it happened. We're moving on. And then of course, yes, my children. I have a daughter right now running around outside this door that you all do not see, who is ready to go to campus with me. But yeah, just their joy and forgiveness and bounce back is so inspirational and aspirational for me, and just a reminder I don't have to stay in, like you said, Sherry, like I don't have to stay in this heavy place.
Thank you, Laura.
Yeah, joy comes for me, it comes quick and easy as I with age and sage and the stage I am in life. Everything is joyful for me. Every single thing in the universe. However, I do want to say that just coming back from the continent and from South Africa, I've been over there. I've been over to the continent. I've been to South Africa about 10 times or so now over the past 15, 16 years. And the first time I went, I understood. When I came back, I understood gratefulness and joy, because when you see our people living in townships and you see how happy they are with what they have, that now that those tapes replay every day in my head. Every like joy for me is just what I've got. Again, if you saw where our people are around the world
Yep.
and the little things that make them so happy and so grateful, we are blessed beyond measure. Trust me. I mean, trust and believe we are blessed beyond it. So that and reading the Bible every day also helps me with controlling my attitude. 'Cause I'm like, Lori, there's some people that piss me off so bad. I want to just, y'all came for me, but then I have to say you missed. So I'm just gonna let it go. I'm gonna let it go. You missed. You missed. And I'm bigger than this. And so it's maturity, it's age stage, but again, it's having seen others in places and spaces where they have so little, so very little compared to what you have, which makes you, we're millionaires, literally. We are literally millionaires if you were to go over and to look, because I think you've been there, Rochelle. You've been to South Africa. You know what I'm talking. Yeah, those of you who've been, y'all know what I'm talking about. So that makes me grateful every day. And of course, my gardening and everything. So I'm a happy camper.
There you go. There you go. This has been, I am sorry that we're running out of time. I'm thinking we're going to have to close, but I want to thank you all so much. This has been so well, it was the look that Lori was talking about. When you tell that story and somebody says it, you don't have to use you can use the shorthand. All I got to do is have somebody give me that look. Yeah, she said it. I heard it. Okay, now I don't have to go off. But there are other times. And so this gave me that sense of, oh, thank you. Thank you. I'm telling you right now, I think we need to come back and have another conversation where we can talk about change and restructuring higher education so that it is a more affirming and liberatory space for Black women And I think this is a group of folks I want to have that conversation with. And so until then, I just thank you for doing this. This conversation has been in some ways both sobering and hopeful. It has brought joy. It's made me smile, and it's made me know you better. So thank you for your leadership in this space. I also need to thank our sponsors, Huron and Rutledge, Taylor and Francis. We appreciate your support. Huron is a global professional services firm that collaborates with clients to put possible into practice by creating sound strategies, optimizing operations, accelerating digital transformations, and empowering businesses and their people to own their future. By embracing diverse perspectives, encouraging new ideas, and challenging the status quo, Huron creates sustainable results for organizations they serve. Rutledge, Taylor, and Francis is the world's leading academic publisher in education, publishing a wide range of books, journals, and other resources for practitioners, faculty, administrators, and researchers. They have welcomed Stylus Publishing to their publishing program and are thrilled to enrich their offerings in higher education, teaching, student affairs, professional development, assessment, and more. Rutledge is proud to support Student Affairs Now. View their complete catalog of authoritative education titles at rutledge.com/education. And of course, I have to send a huge shout out to our producer, Natalie Ambrosi, who does all of our behind the scenes works to make us look good and sound good. We love the support of these important conversations from our community. You can help us reach even more folks by subscribing to our podcast, YouTube, and weekly newsletter, announcing each new episode and more. So if you're so inclined, you could also leave us a 5-star review. I'm Rochelle Pope. Thanks again to my amazing sister friends and colleagues, doctors, Mary Howard Hamilton, Lori Patton Davis, Sherry Watt, and Paris Wicker. And to all of you watching or listening to Student Affairs Now, thank you, and take time for yourselves and your sisters.